Welcome, everybody, to this weekly episode of the HDI Local Chapter's live stream show. It's so good to be back. Spent a week in Las Vegas at the HDI Support World Live Conference. And if you missed our show last week, it was basically Man on the Street, where we were in the expo hall with all the great, wonderful people at the HDI conference. And we just had people stopping by to say hi, what they liked about the conference, what they liked about HDI. You should really check that out. All right, so let's talk about our sponsor. If you've listened to us, you know our sponsor is Robert Half Talent Solutions, and they are a firm that can find you the technology professionals that you need to keep your business running, especially nowadays where it's hard to find good employees. There's not as many out there maybe as there used to be. They can help you find those, whether it be on a contract basis, a project basis, or even a full-time permanent basis. But check this out. They also have some really cool information out on their website at roberthalf.com/technology, where you can find salary guides for what to expect to pay as an employer or what you should expect as a candidate to make. They have things like interview advice and resume advice, and they even have great articles, things like why candidates ghost employers. I had to learn that the hard way. And, an upcoming episode, we'll probably have our good buddy Zach Drew back on to talk about those kind of things. But check them out, roberthalf.com/technology. All right, so let's get on with the show. Today, our guest is Priscilla Lim. Priscilla is a technology director who partners with business leaders to identify critical needs and lead strategies and teams to innovate delivery of results. She focuses on solving complex business problems through a holistic approach that has achieved not only innovative tech solutions, but also optimal organizational structure, high-performing talent, and efficient processes. Priscilla, welcome to our show.
Thanks, Tom. Nice to be here.
So I'm excited to have you on the show. You have such a couple awesome stories to tell, messages to tell our audience. So let's start out with what I like to ask my guests a lot is, what inspired you to get into the technology field?
So it's kind of an interesting story. I wasn't really inspired to be in the technology field at all. I actually started out in my undergrad college major as a chemical engineering major, and
Nice.
I was going to an engineering school or school famous for engineering, and got to the point where my parents, who were helping me pay for school, gave me an ultimatum, which was bring your grades up or change your major or take a semester off.
Stop going.
So I went and talked to, on the recommendation of my advisor at the time, I went and talked to a never to be forgotten dean of general studies named Dean.
Love that.
And she recommended that I go and check out this thing called information technology in the business department. And I'm like, I don't want to be a business major. I don't want to be writing code or hanging out with those computer people. And she's like, just go check it out, see what it's about. You never know. You might actually like it. And for the first time ever, I went and talked to some folks in the program and took some classes. And I discovered that the classes were easy for me. And that was when I learned that college is not supposed to necessarily be hard. That doesn't mean that you're being successful if if your classes are killing you. That's not actually a good sign. It might actually be a sign that you're in the wrong major.
That's true. Not your passion, right?
Right. Not your passion, not necessarily what your skill set is, your natural skill set. Yeah.
So I got to ask you, big hot questions we hear a lot in the field, especially as an IT leader, is like, so what's it like not only being a woman in technology, but what is it like being an Asian woman in technology? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, first I wanted to say thanks for having me on during AAPI Heritage Month.
Which is Asian American
Pacific
Islander. Yeah, right. Yep. Just
Yeah.
want to make sure everybody knew that because, IT, we use a lot of acronyms and we try to make sure we spell those out for people.
Yeah, so I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about this topic as an Asian woman in technology during AAPI Heritage Month. It seems very appropriate. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. When I got into tech originally, of course, it was very much male dominated. And so I figured that there were going to be challenges being a woman in tech, and it was not at all unusual for me to be the only woman in the room. on a regular basis. And then what I also noticed was in many cases, I was the only person of any racial identity besides white in the room. And that happened on a regular basis. And what I didn't realize until I got further into my career was that there were a lot of preconceived notions, and it's part the minority, Asian model minority myth, but it's also even further compounded by being an Asian woman. And some of that didn't come to light until as I started continuing in my career and advancing in my career and changing my role. I kept tripping over a lot of the same stereotypical preconceived notions about what an Asian woman should be like, and really made, I think, the journey more challenging than it needed to be.
Interesting. So I know when I worked for a university, we took bias busters, and they went, "Y'all have biases." I'm like, I don't know about that. But you're right. Like there are things that if you saw my LinkedIn post about the show today, there are some people we have biases, and I'm guessing that you may have encountered those that knew it and those that didn't know it. But what do you mean by preconceived notions about like Asian women?
So yeah, what I was constantly tripping over was people were surprised when I would speak up in meetings. There was this preconceived notion about Asian people in general and Asian women in particular that we are quiet and subservient and we don't speak up. We don't speak on behalf of ourselves, and we don't participate in the conversation. We're sitting quietly in the background and absorbing information, but not participating. And so at first, when I first started doing that, there was a combination of reactions. Some people were shocked, some people were just kind of outright hostile that I would participate and I would speak up and say things, and then they were even more shocked when it was something that was relevant to the conversation, and or a good point. And in typical ways, it would not be unusual for a man to come along and say exactly what I said and get confirmation from folks in the room that that was a good idea. So
Wow. Yeah.
yeah.
And I was going to say, and you were invited to the table for a reason, or they wouldn't have invited you. So what the heck is that about, right? That just blows my mind. So they expected you to act a certain way, even though you were there in the organization for a particular reason, right? I mean,
Right.
wow. So let's talk about like, even take a step back from that. You shared with me a little bit of the story about like when you would apply for positions. Like you are or were in project management. I checked your profile on LinkedIn, and I see you have some pretty good titles there for leadership. So like, did you have that same challenge when you interviewed for jobs?
Not so much in the interview process. It was really in the recruitment process.
Okay. Yeah.
Um,
Well, I guess that whole thing.
yeah.
Yeah. Let's talk about the recruitment process.
Yeah, so I would have these amazing things happen to me where people would constantly tell me things they would make assumptions about what I was interested in, and what they assumed my preferences would be in terms of career. So fairly early on in my project management, I think I was probably maybe one job into PM, but I had been a PM for maybe 5 years, and I applied for a PM job. And to my great disappointment, the female manager actually said to me, she goes, "Well, I think you're highly qualified based on your resume and my conversations with you. But I just have to be honest with you. This department is primarily consists of men in their 50s and 60s, and you appear to be in your early 20s at the oldest, and I just don't think that they're going to be able to respect you as a leader, and I don't think they're going to be able to follow you." And so I didn't get that job for that reason.
Wow. Okay. So I guess I can appreciate the transparency, but tell me that was like 40 years ago. You don't look like you're that old, but still tell me that was 40 years ago. Cause I can't
No,
imagine that being the last 10 years.
no, it was very disappointing to me because number one, it was coming from a woman leader, and she was the manager of these same people, and she was telling me that
What?
based on my physical appearance, looking so young in her mind, that I was not going to be able to command the respect of the team.
Wow.
And I was like, "But you're a woman."
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. And wow. Yeah. That's incredible. So, oh, wow. Okay. I'm still trying to chew on that one. So I have to tell you, one of our former guests, um, I think she works for you. Is that correct? You know I'm talking about Erin, right?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
Erin Waterman reached out to me today because she was so excited to hear you are on our show. And she's probably, I don't know if she's listening now, but I know she promised to be listening or at least watching the rebroadcast. But, I chatted with her today and told her I was excited to have you on the show. And she said to me something on the lines of like, Priscilla is such a huge role model and mentor for me that I just am sucking up everything I possibly can. So there you go. I don't care,
Yay.
your nationality, your gender, whatever. You have the ability to have a major impact on somebody. And let me tell you, Erin was on our show, I think twice now. What a wonderful person. And for her to say something like that is not something she would just say just to make you feel good, and because you're our boss, Priscilla. I'm just telling you right now. I know she really
No,
meant it the way she said
we're
it.
really lucky to have Erin, and we're so happy that she's working with us. And I was talking to her earlier today, and I asked her, how's it going? And she told me this is the most challenging and the most challenging job that she's ever had, but also the most fun she's ever had. And I'm like, okay, good. That's
That
that's a
is
good
awesome.
combination.
Yeah, and I think you definitely need to challenge her because she is one smart cookie. From one of my chats with her, she was, I talked to her, I think, early on when she was still in her first degree or starting her degree or whatever she was doing, and then we had her on again earlier this season and to catch her progress because she's one of the gems of our show that we wanted to follow throughout her career. Amy, our producer, had known her early on and was excited to hear that our next guest, one of our next guests, had picked her up as an employee. So Priscilla, I got to tell you, like, we're down to like 2 minutes to go. I told you this would go fast. What I want to ask you before we go is, as an Asian American woman or Asian woman, what advice would you give to others about, overcoming these challenges? I always like to help people not like speed up that process of getting past the things that I had to go through early in my career. And I'm sure that you want to share that same thing for people in their carear. What advice would you
Yeah.
give them?
Well, so for Asian women in particular, I would
Yes.
say don't let other people tell you what your job, what you're interested in doing in your career. So even today, I had someone reach out to me asking me, wouldn't I be interested in being an IT manager? And I'm like, well, in my last three jobs, including the one that I'm in now, I have had managers reporting to me. So would I be interested in taking a step down in my career? No, I would not. Similarly, when I applied for a director of project management, I had a recruiter reach out to me and say, wouldn't you be interested in applying for the senior project manager position who reported to the director of project management? And I said, no, I would not. So don't let other people dictate to you what you are interested in. Be sure about what you want, and then make sure that you don't give in. I mean, don't let other people
Don't settle
define
for
what
somebody
you're.
else's expectations, right?
Yeah,
Oh,
exactly.
absolutely. That is crazy. I hear people tell, stories about like when I was a kid, oh, the teacher said I never amount to anything. It's kind of it's kind of the grown up version of that, right? I mean,
It is. Yeah.
you're not good enough, or do you really want to be a director of IT? Do you really want to
Yeah. Do
be a
you really want to be a
CIO? How
leader?
do you know? Maybe I do.
And so to those people, I would say, look up Ty Lee, look up Layla Jana, and I would dare anyone to say to either of those women that they didn't want to be CEOs of the companies that they have, the multi-billion
Yeah,
dollar
because they're
companies.
not doing very well,
Why?
right? No, yeah.
Yeah.
What a joke
They
there,
definitely
right?
didn't listen to anybody that was telling them that they didn't want to be CEO of their own companies.
Challenge accepted, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
wonderful.
exactly.
All right. Well, I'd like to thank you for being on our show. So, for those of you interested in reaching out to Priscilla, we have her LinkedIn contact information on the screen. She's been a wonderful guest, and love to hear more from you and in your leadership career moving forward. Take care of Erin for us because we want to have her back on the show. For those of you watching, thank you for again following us on Twitch and YouTube. Hashtag HDI Local and HDI Local Chapters. You want to hear more about our organization? The link's at the top, hdilocalchapters.org, and see what we're all about. We connect people in the service and support industry with wonderful people like Priscilla. So, Priscilla, thank you so much for being our guest, and good luck in your career. And do not let anybody tell you what to be when you grow up. I still haven't figured out
All
what I
right.
want to be when I grow up, but don't let anybody tell you what to be when you grow up.
Thanks so much, Tom. It's been a pleasure being on.
You too. Thank you so much. Bye, everybody.